This is the Sherborn Advisory Committee meeting for October 4th, 2023. And I call the meeting to order. I will start in usual fashion by reading through the agenda. I have one small change to propose to the agenda, which I'll mention as I read through, and then we'll see if there are any other changes. So as per usual, we'll start with liaison reports, and then our current meeting items as listed are an update on warrant Article 5 for the special town meeting, followed by a review of the advisory report draft that I sent around earlier today. I'm going to propose we really start with the review of the draft of the report. And I think when we get to the discussion about the text for Article 5, that will be the natural time to come around to discussing kind of an update on where are we on Article 5 and the revised legislative text that's now been proposed and is available. Then we'll do a brief preview of budget guidance and COLA. I think given that town meeting business, I think is going to absorb a bunch of time. I think we'll be best served by saving the substantive part of the COLA and budget guidance discussion for next week. But I can do a little bit of a setup of just kind of, what is it that we're trying to do when we get there, and how does it go, and just kind of set it up. And truth be told, there's some background material that I would like to pull together for that. And given the town meeting things happening this week with getting the draft of the report written, I just didn't get a chance to do that. And I think we can have a better discussion after there's a bit more background provided there. And then if we're not all exhausted, we will approve minutes for the September 13th meeting. Steph Harrison is doing the minutes for the public hearing, and those aren't ready yet, but hopefully before long. So that's what I have for meeting agenda, with the one small tweak. Anybody else with changes to the agenda to propose? Motion to approve the agenda as amended and read.
So moved.
Thanks, Natalie. Second?
I second.
Second.
Great, thanks. So let's do a quick roll call just to make sure everybody's good with that. Paul?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
Natalie?
Aye.
Mike Winters?
Aye.
Wasim?
Aye.
Mike F?
Aye.
Penn?
Aye.
And I think Nora dropped off.
Aye.
Oh, you're here. Great. I lost you. Great. Thanks. And I'm I as well. So we're set on that with the agenda. Okay. So let's see. So a couple of things just to get us started. One, volunteer to take minutes tonight. Do my hard classroom stare, looking intently into the camera.
I'll take minutes.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you, Mike. We probably should, and maybe when we have a meeting that's not quite such full agenda, maybe we could talk about whether we want to set up a rotation for that or how we want to do that. But thank you for doing that. I also just wanted to say a thank you to everyone for contributions, endurance last week at the public hearing. It was a long meeting. I think it was a very productive meeting. I think the conversation was really, really valuable, and I think helped move the ball forward. And I think, as we're going to get to, led to the working group on Article 5 to make some changes. So I was really happy with how that went, and appreciate everybody's, as I said, endurance and sticking it through to the end, and staying high enough energy to keep everything going and keep a good conversation going. Okay, so that said, anybody with a liaison report to bring back? Okay, well then let's get to it. I will do a screen share in a second of the report. Let me just frame for everybody kind of what the decisions in front of us tonight are, because they are bit more narrowly constrained. They are a little bit, they're a little bit constrained. So our business tonight really is all about approving text for the advisory report draft. If there's, relatively modest changes and people are fairly happy with the draft, it would go to the printer tomorrow. If we have to do more work, we'll have to figure out how to do that once we know it needs to be done. But that's really the main thing, is to approve that draft. And the timeline is short. The timeline, even for a Springtown meeting, it's not quite this short, still short, but this is particularly short timeline because of the legal requirement that needs to be mailed out to households a certain number of days before town meeting. And so that's the reason for, on the schedule, tomorrow would be the day it has to go to the printer. Probably could squeeze one more day out, but then it's really got to go. So that's our main task. And of course, when we get to Article 5, there's that space for minority report that also has to be filled in, and will perhaps, or dropped, and we'll come to that in a minute. But just by way of saying that our main task is the text of the advisory report, that really means we're not about tonight relitigating what we discussed at the public hearing. The advisory report is meant to be a fair summary of the articles and a fair summary of kind of the views of the majority as expressed at that meeting, with, on Article 5, the opportunity for the two who did not support favorable action to add a minority report if they want. But it's really not about relitigating, and it's really not about revising the legislative text, because that legislative text really is a document proposed by the working group, but that really is the select board's document. And that's on their agenda for tomorrow, and the select board will take that up tomorrow. But again, that's just not really our purview for tonight. All right. So that being said, I thought I would, in a minute, pop up the advisory report, do a screen share. And I think we can start with just, does anybody have any big picture issues they want to bring up about that? If there aren't any, or after we've talked about those, then I think, like we do with minutes, I will just scroll through slowly page by page. If people have any corrections, edits, found typos, or I really think this sentence should be dropped, or it should be changed in some way. And I think when we get to the end of Article 5 in the minority report, then we can get to talking about the revised legislative text and what Wasim and Mike W. want to do or not do with the minority report. Everybody okay with that process? Okay. So let's just start. I will take me just a second to do a screen share and get this popped up on the screen. But anybody with any big picture concerns about the report structure? The advisory chair who wrote this must be an idiot because he just completely mangled everything. Okay, well, I'm relieved at that point. So let me do a screen share and pop it up, and then let's collect any issues or concerns about particular language that anybody has. And hopefully, we'll see how it goes, but hopefully we can. So did that show up?
Yes.
Okay, it's good. Everybody can read it?
Yep.
Okay, great. I've got to rearrange one thing on my screen. Okay. So I will just start slowly scrolling through. I'll add a little commentary as we go along, but I would say for advisory members, just unmute yourself and jump in. I don't think we need to be super formal about this with raising hands and all of that. Sorry, just taking a quick note here. Okay. So the first page obviously is just the setup. Note, of course, all our names are at the bottom, and that's why it's important that everybody be comfortable with what's written here. basic setup and a plea to people in town to come to the meeting and participate. Stop me at any point. Note 2 in the top. I think Mary Wolf will run a tight meeting. I think we'll get done on Tuesday night, but note that if we don't, the continuation is Thursday night at the high school, but because of something else happening in the auditorium, we will be in the gym if that happens. So let's hope we get done on Tuesday night. Okay, and then this is just the usual description of procedures for everybody. The table of contents obviously is an old one that needs to be changed after the text finalizes. And for everybody's benefit, of course, note the Tri-County election coming up a week after town meeting.
So again, it's Paul. Like I have a very small feedback. It
Of
says
course.
in the middle of the first paragraph, it says Commonwealth. Should that say Commonwealth of Massachusetts, or is it fine to say Commonwealth?
Well, I will flag that. I think the way it's here is the way that it has typically been done. But I can check in with Mary Wolf since she's
really small. It's not that big a deal. It's not substantive, but
yeah. But might as well find out. And Mary's the one really who prepared this text, so we can just do a quick check with her. Okay, good. Rolling along, getting on to substance. Anything on Article 1? Article 2? So how many people have dogs?
Very funny.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Natalie, just trying to have a little fun tonight.
I think you should. We got to have some fun sometime.
Okay. And then we're getting to the more complicated ones. Article 3. And as you can see down at the bottom, written right with, given everything we know, the $500,000 grant seems very likely. So hoping that means people at town meeting will be comfortable that this is reasonably paid for. Wow, batting 3 out of 3. Should have planned some more things for this meeting tonight. Okay, Article 4. Anything there that
Dan, the one comment I had, Article 4.
Yeah.
It was the last sentence in that advisory committee. The increase in allowable total square footage is the only change the developer is asking the town to approve. I don't know if it seems like significant change or change of consequence. The last sentence there. But I don't know if we say the.
Let's see.
The increase in allowable total square footage is the only change the developer is asking the town to approve.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm there. It took me a second to catch up to you. I'm there. So
it's that seems like the crux of this whole, new amended, preliminary development plan. But I know there were some other things on the margin, right, in terms of open space and other things around that seem to be different. I don't know if we want to tweak that language a little bit.
Yeah. So I think that those other changes don't require a town meeting vote, and I think they're in the purview of the planning board. Jeff can hop on in a minute and tell me if that's correct, but I think the piece that has to go to town meeting is the square footage piece. The other stuff, I mean, what you said, Mike, is exactly right, that there are some other things that changed, like the open space, but that doesn't require town meeting approval. So the only thing I think that they're asking town meeting to approve is the square footage. Jeff, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, you answered it correctly. That's what I was going to say. The only thing is the wording is a little off because it's not the only thing they're asking the town to approve, but it's the only thing the voters have to approve. The other ones, as you said, will be part. It's called the preliminary development plan. So the planning board always gets a final development plan too. So there's always some tweaks. But this one, because of their bylaw, requires voters to approve.
So, all right, so Mike, then you've raised a good point, and Jeff highlighted the awkwardness in the wording. Would it be better to say the only change the developer's asking town meeting to approve? Would that help? Since, right, Mike, as you highlighted, I can see now why the language here is a little problematic, because as you highlighted, they're going to ask for a bunch of stuff. It's just they're not going to ask town meeting for it. They're going to ask the planning board for it.
Yeah, I think that may be better. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the only thing that's required, the only change that requires town meeting, because they're not really asking the town meeting to approve it. The bylaws require it. They're asking for that change, but the bylaw requires a town meeting vote for that one change.
Well, how about this? Does that help?
Yeah, but I would probably just run it by Chris Owen when you
Yeah.
make sure he's good with the wording, but
Yeah, that's why I'm redlining
it
here.
may be a regulation rather than a bylaw. I'm not good at details. So, but
yeah, I can easily get with Chris tomorrow.
All right, thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
All good. Mike, does that
Yep.
make this better for you? Okay,
Yep.
great. Thanks for catching that. It's a good catch. The wording, yeah, wasn't as clear as it should have been. What else on Article 4?
Just a procedural question, Dan. When in town meeting, the town moderator reads the article and the town votes, they vote on approving the article, correct? Not the motion as written by advisory, is it?
No, they vote on the motion as written by advisory.
I see.
And just as a heads up, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be in a meeting with Jackie Morris, Mary Wolf, I think Jeremy, and Tom Mullen, who's the town council who's handling this. And I put together a draft of those motions, and we're going to talk about those tomorrow. And the main purpose of that meeting is to get the lawyers to help us understand that everything is correct. But those motions reference the advisory report. And, as per the information in the advisory report, and the advisory report, say on Article 5, is going to reference legislative text. And so, in a sense, and the motions really track the articles. So really, they are approving the articles, but formally, they're voting on the motion that gets made by advisory at town meeting.
Okay.
Marion, go ahead.
Yeah, just a little nitpicking thing. Is asking town meeting to approve as required by town bylaws. I think you might want to say the zoning bylaws there because it's not in the general bylaw.
Okay, very good. Excellent, thank you. Wasim, did I answer your question in a way that made sense?
Yes, I think you did. The distinction here is that if they vote for the article, then, as we discussed in length, and we don't need to go back there, but the article itself approves an amendment to the original plan, which only had a lower number of affordable units, right? Whereas our motion specifically says that they need to have the required number of affordable units. So that distinction is important in town meeting.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So give me a second here and let me just get another document open. Hold on a second. want to look. I want to open up the draft motions document. Just see what is there. Okay, I see exactly what we're saying, Wasim. Okay, so I just put a note into my version of that draft to of the motions draft to add in the language from advisory's recommendation. So the motion would then reflect favorable action, advisory moves favorable action, and then we can include the, in compliance with zoning bylaws and so on. Lawyer may have some reaction to that, but I will bring that up tomorrow and see about getting that included in the motion, since as you correctly pointed out, it's the motion that's being approved rather than the report. It might be that by the motion referencing the report, it's there implicitly because it will be in that language will be in the report, but I will bring that up with Tom Mullen tomorrow and make sure that that gets done correctly, and that point that we made in our vote last week is reflected, is legally reflected in what's being approved at town meeting. Good, thanks for that. That's good.
So Dan, I wonder, switch Paul again. So I wonder if it's worth adding a sentence before that saying something like, the advisory committee had discussions about other elements of the preliminary development plan, right? Because we did, but then we agreed that those other elements would be covered by the zoning bylaws, right? Because otherwise you kind of jump right into the text about asking the town meeting to approve as required by the zoning bylaws. So I wonder if it helps for clarity to add a sentence before the increase is allowable to say something like, we talked about other, there was a discussion about other elements of the preliminary development plan, but that we agreed that the total square footage was the only salient one or something like that. Because that's what led us to say that we were happy to approve as required by the zoning bylaws. Does that make sense, or is that
yes? No, I think I do understand what you're saying. I guess I'm just kind of thinking whether or not that would take us sort of beyond sort of
the matter,
what town meeting is being asked to approve. Let's see. I guess for my part, I think, Paul, I would push back just a little bit. Tell me what you think of this, but in that we discussed a lot of stuff, and if it just says we discussed a lot of stuff, that will be pretty vague.
Right.
And if you were to actually try to summarize that discussion, that would be a lot of extra text that I think might be a distraction, because town meeting isn't really being asked to opine on those other things.
I agree with that. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense to me.
Okay. But picking up on, what you were just saying and Wasim's point, I will raise tomorrow with Tom Mullen to either make sure that by reference to the advisory report, this is part of what's there, so we don't get in this conundrum of we just approved a preliminary development plan that, doesn't reflect this, or find a way to include it in the motion that we write. Okay, what else on Article 4?
Dan, I just, it may be correct, but is the vote count correct? Because I'm just looking above and it was 9 to 0. Before it's 8 to.
Yeah, so I think that's I think it is correct, because I think Natalie had to drop off, and I think she was out at that point.
Okay.
Natalie, if that's incorrect, let me know, but that was what I had in my notes from the meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Dan, I have one thought on this.
Sure.
More just it's not changing what's written, but I'm wondering if it might make it a little bit more clear if after the sentence, the developer's requesting a 20.5% increase in the allowable total area, but no change in number of units. So all the to the end of the protected open space. And then maybe if you bump that sentence, if so inclined, the planning board could on its own approve a 10% increase, while this larger increase requires the approval of the town meeting. I think if you bring that up and then go to the next line, and maybe it makes it like a little bit more clear. That might be too nitpicky, but it's just like when I'm reading it, it's like it comes a little bit later, and I feel like it might clarify why they're having to vote, because they wouldn't have to vote if it was only a 10% increase.
Okay, so let's see, the developers requested 20 increase. So let's try that and see how it looks. So let's see. So how does that look? I think if we do that, we'd want to say something like the change in total square footage since otherwise the reference back is the sentence back. So how does that look to everybody?
And one thing, I might change it to while a larger increase. Isn't it true that any increase over 10 requires approval?
Yep, okay, that's good. Yep, that's good. That would be the correct way to write it.
I didn't used to be a writer for nothing.
Dan, a nitpicky thing?
Yeah.
Do we need to have, though, the expectation is that some units would be smaller and some would be larger than the average? I mean, that's the definition of average.
Well, so yes, I mean, you're exactly right. Here was why I included it. I heard some comments in the public hearing, and I've certainly heard comments from people outside of the public hearing about expressing a desire for, gosh, wouldn't it be great if the developer were building some smaller units for people who maybe don't want as big a unit as that, and maybe don't want to pay as much as a larger unit would cost. So because I've heard a bunch of those comments, I thought it might be helpful to explicitly say, hey, some of the units will be smaller. And in particular, the affordable units will be smaller. That's just the way the developer, I think, will do this. So that was the reason that I included it.
Okay, got it.
What else? Nothing like group editing in Zoom on a screen. On to Article 5.
One other question, Dan.
Sure.
Using the current zoning board bylaws, that was something that we got as feedback from Jeff on the select board. So I don't know if that's worth mentioning. That was why we decided to use that language. Is that pertinent or?
To reference who it was that.
Right. We had talked about it, and we're kind of looking for how to say it.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess I don't think that we necessarily need that kind of attribution as long as we all agree that this is the right language, right? Because there are many things here, things here that different people, Marion suggested some things, other people suggested other things. And as long as we're all in agreement that it's the right language, I think we're okay because it's our names that are, going at the bottom.
Right. That makes sense. I'm just referencing some of my notes, but yeah, makes sense.
Good.
I agree.
Good. Okay, good. All right, on to Article 5. And let's spin through the main text, which would be the majority view, and then we can flip things to Mike, W, and Wasim and see what they want to do about a minority report. So I'll do a few. This is the longest one. I'll do a few paragraphs at a time. We can always jump back if we need to. I have an extra space here. Can't believe no one else caught the extra space. Anything on this section that we should change?
Dan, I'm not really exactly sure how we would clarify this, but I don't remember it when I'm reading further down. When we add the part about including those abutting the segment of Coolidge Street within the district and properties on Meadowbrook Road, who would not be connected to the water and sewer infrastructure initially, should we make a note in there that would be something that would be done in the future at their cost? Should we clarify that, or does that get, I don't recall that being clarified later.
Yeah.
I think it is actually, I think there is a mention of the cost, but.
So let's see. So at the bottom paragraph visible on the screen.
Yeah.
It makes clear, I think, that situation for Meadowbrook.
Okay, yep.
But you're right that on Coolidge, I don't think it says it for the other properties on Coolidge that, you know, that they would pay for the individual hookup. I mean, that somebody on Coolidge whose house, you know, abuts the street and abuts the pipe, for them, it's not a huge expense to, I mean, it would be expensive, but, you know, they just have to basically run the pipe from the street to their house. People on Meadowbrook, it's a different situation, which is why I added that sentence down below.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's see. So what could we do?
Would have that option in the future if they so chose and at their expense or something along those lines. I don't know.
Yeah, so you can see that I sort of finessed it by saying according to procedures described in the proposed legislation, because it's in there. So that was how I sort of finessed it. But you know, you're right that not everybody is going to go read the legislation. Let's see. Marion, are you going to rescue us here? Please go ahead.
Maybe. Let's see, in the oh, you can't see my cursor. Okay, in the paragraph that begins to ensure that future needs,
yeah,
where we are, it does say in line 6, in lines 5 and 6, water and sewer would be available to every property in the district in accordance with its current use if an owner chooses to connect and cover the cost of connecting. That does not cover it.
Yeah, so maybe that does.
Maybe that covers that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Marion. I mean, Shelley, the struggle I had with this is it's so much information and figuring out the best sequence to present it so that you know, people wouldn't stumble at points like you just highlighted that, hey, isn't somebody going to wonder here who's paying for it? It comes later, but not earlier. And seem okay as it is? Yeah, okay. All right, so what else on this first part of Article 5? All right, so sliding on. Oh, you'll see the red lining here, or blue lining as it appeared, which are some small changes that I added earlier today, which are they're different than the draft that I sent around. So just wanted to flag that for everybody, since it's the one change I made since I sent the draft around. All right. And then the latter part of this, and then on the majority view, and then we'll come to the minority report discussion. So what do people see here that where you stumbled over language and we should think about tidying something up, or anything that doesn't seem like it reflects what we did last week?
Maybe just wordsmithing.
Yep.
The sense about number of kids added from the school to the school system.
Yeah, just orient us all. Just tell us like which paragraph.
Regarding financing implications. Yep. I would just, the word huge would not add a significant number of students. I don't know, or I would not add a material number of students. I don't know.
So the estimate that's been tossed around, I think, was 36. Who knows if that's the right number or not, right? But based on analysis of, similar types of developments. So maybe not at a large number of students, maybe that
large, we use large up above too. So maybe.
Okay.
The number, however, would not be large.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. I get accused sometimes in my writing of when I was at the Federal Reserve, I spent a lot of time writing about numbers, and people would sometimes harass me a little bit because I would do things like not a huge number. Well, of course it's not a huge number, but that doesn't tell you anything because that just says it's not way over there. It doesn't tell you where it is. So it's a little quirk of my writing. So I'm glad that you caught that. Anything else? Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm going to
go ahead.
Because we have large in there twice, and I'm wondering if we should say that number, however, likely would not be maybe significant. Meadowbrook Commons would be an age-restricted senior housing development, and the apartments in Coolidge Crossing would be of modest size, so that would not likely add a large number of students. I just repeating large.
Yeah. No,
if there's another word, I mean, just
so what about in the first one, replacing large with big? That number, however, likely would not be big. I'm shying away a little bit from significant because
everybody's definition of significant is subjective.
Exactly. We might say 36.
Heard on that call.
But somebody else.
Sure. Okay.
What do you think of that?
I just think it's better not to repeat the same.
Right.
Adjective for that.
Yeah. It makes the reading tedious. Yeah. Okay.
What about material?
I'm sorry.
What about material in terms of changing the overall complexion of the school? But
so I struggle a little bit with material the same way I do with significant. I mean, I think unless we want to make it more complicated and would not add enough students to materially change, class sizes or something like that, could go in that direction, because I think that would be correct, because it's, it's going to be one or two students.
What about generate? What about likely would not be large at the top where you have big, and then down at the bottom, Coolidge Crossing would be a modest size, so likely would not generate a large number of students, or maybe we leave big and then put I don't know.
I think it's the parents who do the generating.
That's true. But generate those, yeah.
So I would likely not generate instead of add.
Generate maybe. Sorry.
Marion, go ahead. You might have a good
suggestion. Let me give it a try. It would. Or another way to say would not be large. It would be to say would be within the capacity of the current schools of the schools, within the capacity of the schools. I guess that's not good. Yeah, that is what they told me though.
that sort of circles back to what Mike was saying about, wouldn't be a material change.
Yeah, okay.
You also have generate twice there now, so you could change the new generate to contribute, would likely not contribute.
Contribute is good, yeah.
I like that, not contribute a large number of students.
Do we want to put in the estimate that we're essentially working with to make this statement?
No.
Okay.
I vote no for that. I think you guys are kind of overthinking how closely people are going to be reading this. But
yeah, I think I'd also be reluctant to put the number in because I think it's, people looked at other developments, did some analysis, but it isn't, I don't think it's the thing where somebody did a comprehensive study that we could cite and say, the science says it's going to be 36. I think it's more order of magnitude. It's not going to be 100. It's going to be a much smaller number. So,
Dan, what if we just said would modest size so likely would not contribute many students?
Fine by me. I think that works.
Yeah.
Or you could use the word add.
Likely not add many students, Nora?
Or add is significant, but then we're back to significant. So I just thought add would be another word.
Seems okay to me. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So then if we're good with this, then a couple comments and then let's get on to talking about really having Wasim and Mike talk about what they want to do with the minority report. One, I'm sure you all noticed in this last paragraph that, I tried to make it, thought we needed to make clear when the public hearing was, what was the material we were looking at then, because we all suspected then, and in fact, it seems to be what's happened. The legislative text has been revised by the working group to be presented to the select board tomorrow night. So I will in a second pop up Marion's summary of what those changes were on the one that she put together to just kind of highlight those. And I think that will give us a chance to talk about any issues around those changes. We can pop up the legislative text if that ends up being useful, but I thought maybe Marion's document would be sufficient. And then really, I think it comes back to Mike W. and Wasim, since they were the two who hadn't recommended approval. Do they want to include a minority report? So I think there are a number of options. They could say, nope, we voted, we're good with that. Minority reports are not required. Many times when there's been a split vote, there hasn't been a minority report because the people who are on that side didn't feel it was necessary. Minority report could say something like, given the change in the legislative text, which will be available to people at town meeting. I think there'll be copies of the proposed changes to the legislative text that will be distributed to everybody at town meeting. They could say, even with those changes, I would stand with my vote as it was at the public hearing. I think the third option would be, given the changes in legislative text, I would now, given the changes in legislative text, I would now support, or I would now be in favor, I would now support favorable action on the article. And it really could be, either nothing, or either of those. And of course, if Mike or Wasim or anybody else wanted to, this doesn't happen often, but if they wanted to, could at town meeting stand up and offer whatever commentary they wanted. Occasionally, minority report, people will speak up at town meeting, although most often I would say that doesn't happen. Okay, so let me pop up Marion's document and just quickly spin through that. Give me 1 second here. Let me first stop this screen share. And hold on. Too many documents all at once. Okay, there we go. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. Marion, since you're here and you very kindly put this together, do you want to just take a minute and walk us through what's here? You can see I did a little highlighting.
Yeah, can you make it any bigger on your screen?
Yes, I think I can. Is that better?
Actually, that's smaller.
Okay, let me try something different.
I mean, maybe everybody can see it just fine. Oh, there you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
All right, excellent.
Is that good for everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, what I tried to summarize here is that we took the concerns of the minority here, and actually the majority expressed it too, very seriously, and thought that if we can possibly fix this, we should. So I worked with the lawyer, and then the working group got together on Monday and considered the changes. I don't know exactly how those changes are handled at town meeting. Dan, you and Mary will have to figure that out. But basically, the change that we think you were, or the provision that you thought we're not comfortable with, is that under the old version, a developer could come in and propose a big development that takes up all the excess capacity. There would be nothing left for anybody else, even to do the modest incremental or organic growth that you wanted. So basically, we revised the language to assure that sufficient capacity will be reserved or made available for existing residents to make incremental additions, that it do not constitute a change of use, like addition of bedrooms or an accessory apartment. That's the sort of thing I think one of the things we were hoping would happen. So you can see, I probably shouldn't read it to you, but basically, in spite of the fact that the legislation says the commission has to require any change, in fact, notwithstanding that provision, if the use of the property within the meaning of the bylaws and the number of dwelling units is not changed, they do not require such permission. They don't require permission, but of course, to add water capacity, they'll have to get permission to increase their use, but they don't. Their added bedroom or accessory apartment doesn't need to be approved by the commission. And if the reserve capacity, of course, we don't know precisely how much reserve capacity will be needed, and it'll be up to the commission to allocate the capacity into the reserve category or into the excess category. But in case we don't get that quite right, the district may utilize available excess capacity for such small additions. So that's basically what the new language says. And the other thing that I worried about, and I think you did too, is that given the fact that the commission shall approve any project for which there is excess capacity, we didn't say anything about when that allocation would actually happen. And so a developer would be able to lay claim to capacity by proposing a project to the state for 40B or to the town for a subdivision. And that becomes then a race to be first. And to get around that, I think you need to scroll down a little bit. We put in a specific time at which the excess capacity would be allocated to the project. It would be the earliest date when the approvals required for such a project from local public bodies. And that means public committees and boards like planning board, zoning board of appeals, etc., have been issued and have become final and unappealable. That way, the excess capacity is not assigned irreversibly to any project until the project is approved. It doesn't have to be built, but it has to be approved. And incidentally, that local public bodies does not mean the building inspector. It doesn't require a building permit. It does require the town boards and committees to have approved the project.
Right. Thanks, Marion. That's very helpful. All right. So if anybody wants, we can pop up. I'm going to unshare so it will be easier for all of us to see each other. If anybody wants me to pop up the legislative text, I can. I'm guessing everybody had a chance to look through it, and Marion just did a very nice job of highlighting the essential changes. So that being said, Mike, Mike W., Wasim, what do you think you want to do, if anything, with a minority report?
Yeah, and I appreciate, Marion, the fact that you jumped on putting together a fix after the discussion, and I think that really, it may not be perfect, but I don't think we could ever be perfect. So I'm in favor of for the minority report, expressing that I would vote and approve in approval with the revised text.
Okay. We can talk process in a minute, but Wasim, what are you thinking you would want to do?
So I actually have no issues at all with the article, the motion as written in the report. I thought the motion that was mentioned during our public hearing said something about the commission defining what the reserved capacity is. And that is what I voted no to. But what you just popped up, the report, has a motion that has absolutely nothing about the commission. So the reason, again, I voted no is because it's very ambiguous. When do you actually establish the commission? Is there a gap between that establishment of the commission and when you define what reserved capacity is? Is there a gap? Do you have a gap timeline where reserved capacity is undefined? That was my issue. But the motion that you showed on the screen in the report, that is perfectly fine with me. So I don't know how to express that, but I have no intent on writing a minority report in this case, because again, the report as presented and the motion, I'm perfectly fine with.
So, all right. So, let's see. So a couple thoughts on that. One, I'll start and then Marion, you can follow on. One, the motion will make reference to the advisory report, and the advisory report makes reference to the amended legislative text. So the amended legislative text implicitly is part of the motion. And the current version, I mean, the past version and the current version, Marion, jump in if I don't say this correctly, but it still says that the commission will set the reserve capacity. I really think there isn't any way for that to be set ahead of time, because until there's a commission, nobody can really do that. And it just, we on advisory or the select board or the working group at this stage just doesn't have the facts that would be needed to say, here's the number that's the reserve capacity. So I would think it would be one of the very first orders of business of the commission would be to establish a reserve capacity. And I think maybe I'm less concerned than you by the ambiguity, because until they define a reserve capacity, they can't give away any excess capacity. So the risk of, that timeline and ambiguity somehow leading somebody to be able to grab a bunch of water and then, the regular people that are blocked, I don't think can happen, because nobody can get excess capacity until reserve capacity is defined.
Yeah, that's correct. Jeremy, I'm sure you can help me with this, but the legislation doesn't stipulate exactly when the commissioners will be appointed. But I believe the way this works is that the provisional commissioners will be in place, and I'm sure they'll be thinking ahead about the reserve capacity and excess capacity, and they'll become active once there is a water district. Until this legislation is passed, there's no district, and therefore no commissioners. But we'll have them waiting in the wings. And incidentally, the intermunicipal agreement with Framingham will be drafted and we hope ready to go. But it won't be signed until this legislation becomes law at the state. So we can't say now or until it's really signed exactly how much total capacity we'll have. So there's work the commissioners can do in advance. And as far as the power put in the hands of the commissioners, remember, there are 3 of the commissioners are appointed by town boards. So there still is town oversight on how this works, irregardless of the fact that the water district is a separate legal entity. Jeremy, can you add to that? I don't know what else to say to that, because I understand that I think it's not clear exactly how it'll work timeline. Jeremy might be.
He might be in another meeting.
In another meeting, yeah, I think he might be.
He might be in the ZBA meeting. He mentioned he would be bouncing back and forth.
Does that help, Wasim? Or...
Yeah. So again, as long as we advisory are not introducing any additional ambiguity, that was really my concern. So again, I'm perfectly fine with the motion as written, that as you showed it on the screen, Dan. The motion essentially references nothing. I mean, I know you're saying it implicitly references something, but it doesn't specifically say what I heard during the public hearing. So again, I'm fine with the motion as written.
Okay.
And thank you, Marianne, by the way, for adding that additional language. That does make it a lot better.
Well, thank you all for pointing out the weak points that we already kind of knew but hadn't been able to grapple with. And I think you helped a lot. So thanks.
So Mike, it sounds like, and it's really up to you, and if Wasim wants to put the words together, because whatever words you send me, I will, with no editing, put those words into the report. But in principle, Mike, it sounded like you were something like, one of those in the minority would now support favorable action given revisions to the legislative text. I mean, you can get the words exactly how you in your voice, however you want, but that would be I gathered that would be the gist.
Yeah, that's right.
And so then, Wasim, I think the question for you is, would you want Mike to write that as one of those in the minority believes that, or would you want to say both of those in the minority believe that? Or would you want to write a different sentence? So, Mike would write a sentence, you would write a sentence with one person thought this and another person thought that.
No, for the sake of everyone's time, I think it's easier just to say minority agrees given the revised language. It makes it clean, It's easy.
Okay.
No more complication during town meeting.
Okay. So that sounds good. So do you two want to get together? I probably not efficient to try to draft it on screen right now. But do you want to get together, like either post meeting, I could leave the Zoom link open, or get on the phone, and by sometime mid-morning-ish tomorrow, if that's not too insane ask.
How about I can just send an email at the end of the meeting to you, Dan, and I'll copy Wasim, and then
okay.
Wasim, you can just give it your thumbs up or thumbs down.
Okay. And all I need is text and that both of you agree. And then again, I'll do no wordsmithing, no editing. I would just put it in. Okay. Everybody else on advisory clear with what we just did and how that's going to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. That sounds great. So anything else on the advisory report text that we should talk about? Everybody's good? So why don't we just make this, just so there isn't any question later about process, why don't we just do a roll call let me put it this way. Let me entertain a motion. We'll do this very, very Robert's Rules-ish. I've been watching the House of Representatives, so I'm learning all these new twists and turns in Robert's Rules. Let me entertain a motion to approve the draft advisory report as edited on screen with the soon addition of a minority report. Anybody? Thanks. Second?
Second.
All right, so let's just do a quick roll call. Paul?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
Mike F?
Aye.
Natalie?
Aye.
Nora?
Aye.
Mike W?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Wasim?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Okay, so that's great. That way, nobody can say that this somehow got slipped through. The one thing I will say is I will run our changes to the Article 4 stuff by Chris Owen, chair of the planning board. I think he'll be fine with it, but if there's some tiny tweak that we need to make to keep it accurate, I will just go ahead and make that without coming back to everybody. It won't possibly change the substance. It might just be, like the thing that Jeff Waldron said about exactly, bylaw regulation or some small change like that. Okay, so unless anybody has anything else on the report, let's shift gears and talk COLA and budget guidance. And Marianne, thank you very much for joining our meeting. Very helpful.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So next week we'll talk budget guidance and COLA. Here's for new members on the committee, here's what those things are. The budget guidance is instructions that we send to every department head with our expectation for how they would set their budget. And for many years, that budget guidance has been for flat or zero growth budget, with an idea of, as kind of a starting point goal, that if there are new things that a department wants to do, it should be thinking of things it's currently doing that it could stop. Are there efficiencies it could gain? And so unless there is something unusual happening in a department that, budget would come in, would come in flat. So that's one piece of sort of, the budget part. Then there's the COLA piece, and we can write down whatever number we want. I'm just providing the history. And we often, if everybody had a chance to look at the budget letter from last year, we typically include language of course, understand that in some departments, in some circumstances, it isn't going to be possible to have a flat budget without making significant cuts in services. And so, last year there was a lot of discussion about, for instance, fuel costs going up, asphalt costs going up. So say in DPW, if you want to plow the same number of roads as we typically do in a winter with a typical number of storms, gasoline is going to cost more, and there's no way to provide that service with a flat budget. So they're all things that we should talk about next week. But that's one of the key numbers or key things that we need to agree on. The other key thing we need to agree on is what I think it's a bit of a misnomer, but what gets called the COLA or cost of living adjustment, which is for employees of the town who are not union and are not contract employees, right? So there's some employees like fire chief, police chief, who have a contract with the town that specifies the path of their salary. But for all the non-contract, non-union employees, we make a recommendation. Town meeting ultimately decides, but we make a recommendation for a COLA for that group. And we will hopefully over the next week, I will be able to connect with Vicki Rellis, who's the chair of the personnel board, because the personnel board typically makes a recommendation to us, which we then take on board when we then make our recommendation for what we would propose town meeting approve in terms of the budget. For many years, well, let me work backward in time. Last year, the COLA we agreed on was 4.5%. The year before that, it was 4%. And for many years before that, it was 2%. For a long, long time. Inflation was low, 2% COLA. That was repeated for many years. So our decision will be for the coming year, for fiscal 25, what number do we want to propose? And I will pull together a bunch of, as I mentioned, a bunch of background data on what's been happening to wage statistics and other things that the federal government collects that provide some context for what's been happening to wages of state and local workers around the country and what's been happening to wages and salaries in New England and so on. So I will pull a bunch of that together. Deb Seifring put together that very helpful table that I circulated that answers the question of if, say, a COLA was 3, 4, 5%, how much would that cost the town? And so, what would the implications be for the budget? And Deb put those very helpful numbers together that highlight that. All right, so that's just a bit of backdrop. I didn't really have a lot else to say on that. We could pop last year's documents up and go through them, but I think probably everybody can just look at those. Either already have, or you can do that independently to get ready for next week. And I will probably over the weekend pull together this background material and send that around. All right, so what questions or comments about that? I just wanted to kind of lay out what we're doing, but thought it made sense to get to that substantive discussion when we have a bit more time and a bit more background in front of us.
Dan, is it true that contract employees are not subject to COLA? I thought they were.
So
like the police chief and the fire chief, I thought they are also subject to the COLA.
Deb, go ahead.
I was gonna, Wasim, their contract says that they receive either a 2.5% increase, and if the increase goes above that 2.5%, they would receive the additional. So like it doesn't really have any impact on the first 2.5%.
But if
okay.
But Deb, say that the recommendation was to repeat last year at 4.5%, then would contract employees get the 4.5%?
They would.
Yeah. Okay. So then what seems correct? So thank you.
Well, yes and no, because if you voted 1%, they still get 2.5%.
Got it.
Right,
Got it. Okay. Wasim, thanks for catching that. That's a good clarification. I didn't say it exactly right.
And then Dan, may I just maybe for the sake of new advisory, maybe give a little bit of background of why we've been so insistent on zero operational cost
Yes,
growth for
that would
so
be
many
great.
years.
That would be great.
And I don't know if I'll be able to explain this well, but essentially it's a kind of a cycle. It's a cycle. So if we keep costs under control and our tax rate goes down, okay, so in general, I'm using generalities here, but if we keep costs under control, our tax rate goes down, our housing becomes more attractive, house prices go up. Our tax bill is not going to go down necessarily. Our tax bill will still go up because the value of our houses will go up, but our tax rate will go down. So, and that's a cycle. So if we keep on maintaining a low tax rate, it's good for our property values. At the end of the day, we're still going to be paying our taxes, and there's probably going to be more taxes because the town is going to need more, but it's important to maintain low tax rate is very important for because when people have a budget and a larger percentage is being paid towards a higher tax rate, then a smaller percentage is being paid towards a mortgage, right? So it's just trying to keep the tax rate down has been a goal of advisory for a long time. And the reverse is also true. If we exceed the budget and the tax rates run up high, then we will end up in a situation where our houses become less attractive just because the tax rate is so high, right? So that's yeah, that's the extent of what I'm going to try to explain. And I have been terrible at explaining this year after year, and repeating this has not, made me any better at explaining it. But it's essentially a cycle, right? So.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Wasim. That reminded me of something that I meant to say earlier. I did a talk on Monday for the Council on Aging that I called Sherborn Budget 101, where it was like 45 minutes of just sort of a basic overview of, what do we do on advisory? How does the budget get set? Where does the money come from? Where does the money go? How are tax rates determined? Just picking up on some of the points that Wasim made. I'll send that around. To use an economist popular expression, free disposal applies, which means, if you're not interested, just hit delete. I'll never know. I won't care. But maybe particularly for new members on advisory, if you want, I'm sure you've read a bunch of the background stuff, but if you want just a quick run through on what are some of the key budget concepts, how does Prop 2.5 work, and some of those other things, it's there. So I'll send that around. Okay, anything else on setup for next week on COLA and budget guidance? Okay, great. Then our last order of business is to look at minutes. And I will, in just a second, do a screen share. This is, as I said, September 13th minutes. We will get to the monstrous public hearing minutes maybe next week. Okay, so minutes are here. Thanks to Natalie for putting these together. I will, in the usual way, scroll through, just unmute and jump in if there's anything here that you see that we should change. Anything we need to tweak or change that anybody sees that we should adjust? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve minutes as shown on the screen.
I move to approve the minutes as shown on the screen.
Thanks, Natalie. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, I'll second.
Great. Okay, I'm going to end the screen share so I can see everybody. And we'll just run this one up from the bottom. Wasim.
Aye.
Nora.
Aye.
Natalie.
Aye.
Mike W.
Aye.
Shelley.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Mike F.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Okay, so we're set on that. Okay. Unless anybody has any other business or anything to talk about, we will adjourn in just a second. So
Dan, I just wanted to say, Mike Winters said the revised text, and I'm okay with it. So I just
okay.
I don't know if it's okay to actually respond to Mike and an email and discussion. So I'm just mentioning it here in the meeting.
If you send me the text, if you guys are happy with it, I will drop it in.
Yeah, Mike already sent it. So
perfect. Okay, so that's great. That's and I'm glad you. I mean, if you guys want to pop it up on screen and talk about it, we can. But if you're both happy with it, we're done. Okay, great. So let's see. So I was going to say one meeting tonight was quicker than I forecast. So maybe we all get a little bit of time back after last Wednesday's night meeting going the other way. And the other thing that I'm wondering is, Natalie, what are you making? I can see bits and pieces of it popping in.
Yeah, just a sweater.
Okay. Okay. So some lucky person is going to get a great sweater.
Right.
Okay. So I would entertain, unless somebody has anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Where's your dog tonight, Dan?
Yeah.
So I think they are downstairs with Sam.
Okay. Okay.
So no guest appearances from them tonight.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second? Okay.
Second.
Paul.
Aye.
Mike F.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Shelley.
Aye.
Mike W.
Aye.
Natalie.
Aye.
Nora.
Aye.
Wasim.
aye.
And I'm aye as well. We are adjourned.